All right. The time now is 10:30 in Australia. In Singapore, it's 7:30. Let's begin. Okay, so for spoken interaction, oral, this is the band descriptor to get a band 5. Band 5 is the highest you can get for spoken interaction. It's upon 15 maximum. So if you're scoring from 13 to 15 in this band, you are considered to be in band 5. So how do you actually achieve a band 5 for spoken interaction? All right. Number one, your responses need to be well considered. They need to be coherent. Coherent means it is clear and it makes sense. Like the way you explain yourself, right? Makes sense to the examiner. Okay. It is well developed, which means you give details about your experience or whatever it is that you're talking about. All right, so well developed means details. And it's not just details, right? If you could give examples to explain what you mean, okay, that would be even better. Now, it's not just about your content as well. It's also about your vocabulary, right? Has your chosen vocabulary helped you to explain yourself in the clearest way possible? And also your pronunciation when you're speaking. So if you find, that you have the tendency to speak Singlish, then this is the time when you actually cannot speak Singlish, because if you do so, you will be penalized. All right. So no informal, way of speaking, or rather, please avoid any Singlish when you are doing when you're taking the test for spoken interaction. And lastly, okay, engages in a sustained discussion. How do you sustain a discussion? Okay, look at this. This word is very important. Discussion. It's a discussion. It is not an interview. It is not an interrogation. It's a discussion. You sustain a discussion by sharing information back and forth, right? Between two people at least. So you need to ask me questions as well. I can't be the only one asking you questions. Same thing for your exams. Your examiners ask you a question, you reply and answer as best as you can, but remember to also ask them for their opinion. Ask them, sir, what do you think about this topic? I'm interested to know. Or ma'am, if this was so, can you tell me, or rather, can you share, what you think, so and so forth, right? Or Mrs. Tan, what do you think personally about this? Ask your examiner questions as well. That's how you sustain a discussion. Okay, I'm not interviewing you, I'm not interrogating you, I'm asking you to have a spoken interaction with me. Okay, interaction. You know what inter means, right? Inter means between. Action, right, means you must take action. So you take action, I take action, you take action, I take action, then it's called an interaction. Okay, so it's spoken interaction. Oh, yes, go ahead, Yu Leong. Okay, and you can sometimes move beyond the prompts. All right, so moving beyond the prompts means giving other relevant information. Okay, so that's called beyond the prompts. So that's your band 5, which is the one I want you to concentrate on. If you do like a band 4, it's not that fantastic. Actually, this is not band 4. This is band 3 because it's 7 to 8 marks. Band 4 is 9 to 12. 7 to 8 marks. Band 3, right, offers some thoughtful responses only. All right. The vocabulary is largely appropriate, although not all vocabulary, used would be good to explain yourself. Pronunciation is just generally clear, but sometimes unclear. And you only respond to the prompts. You do not engage in conversation with me. Then you get a band 3. All right, so it's something that we don't want to aim for. It should be band 5 that we aim for. Yeah? Okay, so this is a strategy to think about how you can respond. It's one of many strategies, no doubt. I bet there are more out there that your teacher might have taught you. But this one is just called the PEEL strategy because it starts with P-E-E-L for the 4 steps. So the point is the main idea, right? State whether maybe you agree or maybe you disagree. That's like your main idea. Or sometimes it could be, I do it sometimes, or I never do it, or whatever the response should be. Okay, so that's your main idea. Then after you tell me about your main idea, explain why you say so. All right, use examples or your personal experiences and share them with me, okay, to explain further. Then elaborate. Elaborate means to explain your evidence if you need to, right? And how it will help you make your point in the context of what we're talking about, the situation. And lastly, link it back to the question, right? Link it back to the question. So therefore, you can say something like, therefore, I agree or I disagree that blah, 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 so and so forth. That's one way to go about linking it back to the question. Okay? So without further ado, right, that's the PEEL format. You can think about these different strategies as well. Okay. So you can use the 5 Ws and 1 H to generate information for yourself. Who's involved? What should be done? When is this happening? Can I talk about where this normally happens? Why do I think this normally happens? How will I respond to this? How do people respond to this? How should we solve this issue? All right, that's the 5 Ws, 1 H for you to think about stuff you can say. Then you can also think about building on topics. All right, and how do we do that? You can state whether you like or dislike something. Think about it in terms of time, right? Was it the same in the past? Is it the same now? Will it be the same in the future? What do you think? Or you can use a compare and contrast strategy, right? What's the same between these two things? What's different between these two things? Similarity and differences, they are the same as compare and contrast. You can talk about how you feel about the topic as well, right? So this is called building on a topic, another strategy for you to think about. And lastly, another strategy is to think about interesting pointers that you can talk about, like different ways of seeing something, right? So, when people talk about things like, oh, hygiene, right? Most people say, oh, yes, hygiene is very important. But can you say something different? Can you provide an alternative viewpoint that hygiene is not as important as people might think it is? If you can, it would definitely be more interesting than the 39 other students that the examiner just listened to who were all saying hygiene is very important. Then suddenly you come out and you say, actually, I think hygiene is not as important as everyone thinks. Now, I'm not saying that it is not important at all. Yes, hygiene does play a role in the preservation of our teeth and all that. But think about it. In the past, when our ancestors did not have things like toothpaste or even a toothbrush, what did they do to preserve their teeth? How did they survive after that? So hygiene is not necessary for us to survive, but if we want to live to an older age, I think hygiene is really, really important. However, being too hygienic, right, is actually not good, I think, because if we keep ourselves too free from viruses and bacteria, our immune system would not be built up to deal with those bacteria and viruses in the first place, and we might have weak immune systems. Therefore, I think that is why a lot of children these days fall sick really easily, because their lives are too clean. Sometimes a bit of dirt might do you a world of good. You know, that kind of thing. And your teacher will be like, whoa, this person has a different viewpoint, huh? Every other student who came here, right, all said hygiene is very important. Only this person, right, said something different. I'll remember it, and it's very interesting. I like it. Give you higher marks, huh? Yeah. Okay, some other interesting responses, some other interesting pointers you can give would be to give an honest response on what you really think. Don't force yourself to give a response that you think is the correct one that the school wants to hear. All right, give your honest response. Remember, there's no such thing as a wrong or right answer for spoken interaction. We are judging, we are gauging your marks, we are giving you marks based on how well you can speak. Okay? So even if you tell me that studying, right, you hate studying, you find it really boring, and you really think that homework, right, kills you at home, I will still have to give you the marks if you spoke very well on why homework is a waste of time and why studying is very boring. Yeah? If you spoke well, I will have to grade you well. I'm not grading you on the answer that teachers want to hear. Remember that. And your English teacher should not do that as well. All right, that's being very biased. If your English teacher does that, he or she is not being a true English teacher. He or she is just trying to, make you say something that's politically correct to the school. If you can't even share your own true personal response and your own personal feelings, right, then your teacher is not teaching you to speak up. And that's what oral is all about in English, is to teach you to speak, right? So your teacher is not being a very good English teacher then, okay? Remember that. Always give an honest response. If you think studying is boring, you don't like to study, say so in a spoken interaction. Say, I really don't like to study, but I think my parents forced me, and then the school forced me, and then my teachers forced me as well, so I have no choice. If I had a choice, I would rather be doing other things, like playing games that I find more fun, or going out with my friends. But I know that studying ultimately, right, will help me to land a job, because it's very hard to land a good job if I don't have some credentials. At the same time, it would be fantastic if I didn't need to study until it was too high. So, I could be more creative and start my business early. I want to be like Steve Jobs, who didn't actually complete his degree, when he first started. I want to be just like him, that kind of thing. If you said something like that, I would have to accept it, and I would have to give you the marks for it. Okay, so give an honest response, because honest responses mean that you can explain yourself even better with your true feelings, instead of creating something and then trying to fake it with like fake evidence and fake reasons. Yeah. And whatever you say, support it with evidence. Okay. So give examples, so and so forth. So there are some types of questions that you can look out for. All right, personal response, that's a very easy one. This would be like a question that will appear for your first question, right? Personal response, pretty easy. They're just asking you about what you think, right? Give me an experience about a time when something you you misunderstood someone, right? That's an easy one. That's normally your question number one. Okay. Next, personal opinion as well. Same, very easy. Probably a question number one. Why do you think people enjoy traveling so much? That's your opinion, right? And the next one, general knowledge, right? This is normally the hardest one. What help has the government given to cope with inflation? Wow. If you were given this question, you might die.